Okay, next we put in this bracket right here. Okay, next we come to this side and first put in the connector for our engine coolant temperature sensor that's down here. And next we will install our new thermostat. Then we'll put in our new thermostat seal. And then we'll install this radiator hose. Okay. Okay, next we come back to this side, and now it's time to install our tensioner with our new upgraded hoses. And first, it's gonna be really hard to show you guys, but got one side in, the other side. You kind of have to do them both at the same time, but okay, and here's how our new fitting should look. There's that one, and there's that one. Okay, so after getting our new upper intake manifold gasket on there, it's time to install this. This should go a lot smoother than the, the lower intake manifold. Okay. In fact, that's it. That was way too easy. Okay, so next up, the upper intake manifold. Obviously you want to get the bolt started by hand, and you want to work your way from the center out. Here's a little diagram, as you can see. And the torque spec for this is 89 inch-pounds. Okay, we're gonna actually make two passes at this one too. We're gonna go just tighten them by hand first, and then we're gonna torque them down. Okay. Okay, and now we torque them down. Okay, so next you want to put in put in your new injector O-rings and then install that, and then the rest of it is going to be just pretty much the reversal of removal. Should be pretty straightforward. If you took notes, or if you got a video, you can just look it up and just put everything back the way you took it off. So I'm gonna stop this video now, and then I'll come back after I've put everything back together. I put coolant in there, and I'll be ready for a start. Okay. Okay, when you start installing your fuel rail with your injectors, you want to make sure the O-rings are seated all the way in. You don't want to be able to see any of the O-ring. It should be all the way in there. Also, you want to make sure you can, after you tighten the bolts for the fuel rail housing, the fuel rail, you want to make sure you can turn these injectors with relative ease. Okay, if you can't turn them, or if you see some of the O-ring sticking out, you need to take it out and readjust it and put it back in. Okay. Okay, so we got everything put back together, and we're ready for our first start. Actually, this is a good couple of days after I posted that first video for this repair series. I ran into a small little problem. After I put everything back together earlier, a couple of days ago, I put coolant, and then I actually, when I was putting coolant in, it felt like it needed a lot more coolant than it should need. I put in like half a gallon, then a gallon, and I think it just kept going a little bit, and there was no pressure building up, and the coolant was just going right in. So I checked the oil, and what I found out was that I think about half a gallon of the coolant that I had put in the system had ended up in my crankcase somehow. Houston, we have a problem. Jeez, I think I got like half a gallon of my coolant has ended up in the engine. Not quite sure why yet. So yeah, I couldn't start the car like that. What I thought had happened was that when I put the lower intake manifold on, I probably moved the lower intake manifold gaskets, and coolant was, it wasn't sealing right, and coolant was sneaking in, leaking into the engine. So what I ended up doing was I removed everything. I removed the upper intake manifold, the lower intake manifold, and I looked at the gaskets. one of the gaskets on the right side looked like it had moved, but I come to find out later that, you know, when you remember when I was putting on the lower intake manifold and it was really hard to get the bolts in, yeah, that intake manifold was a piece of junk. And make sure if you do this repair and you need a lower intake manifold, don't buy a dormant intake manifold, because you really don't need to force those bolts in. They need to line up perfectly, and you should be able to just hand tighten them without much trouble. What had happened was, I think that in lower intake manifold they didn't cut it right, they didn't do the angles right on the side, or maybe on the bottom it needed to be lower. They must have made in China, I don't know. It's a piece of junk. What I ended up doing was, actually I just went to the junkyard, and you know, these lower intake manifolds, they're in a lot of Chevy cars. They're like in Buicks, Chevy Impalas, Oldsmobiles, Chevy Luminas, and they go way from 98 to 05, and they're all the same. But yeah, what I ended up doing is just went to the junkyard and pulled one out. You know, it's not really that hard once you remove and install it a couple times. You get the hang of it. You know, it took me 20 minutes or so, and the first one I pulled on the surface on the sides where it goes into the intake, your cylinder heads, it was pretty smooth. There was no signs of corrosion like the ones that was on this car, so I ended up using that, and actually I ended up saving 200 bucks too, so because it was 50 bucks at the junkyard, and that doorman was 250 bucks at maybe even more, 260, 70 bucks at the parts store. So I ended up saving $200+ on that, and that's what I recommend you do. Okay. Okay, before I start the car, actually a couple of quick tips as if you have a leak on this car, on this engine, where it might be from. Okay, so if you have a coolant leak on this side, it's going to be these plastic tubes, the factory plastic tubes that go into the tensioner assembly. As you can see, I've replaced them with the upgraded aluminum ones, and so you're pretty sure those are not going to leak. If you have an oil leak, it's going to be the end seals on the lower intake manifold. Okay, so you would need to remove the intake manifold, lower intake manifold, and replace your gaskets. Okay, and if you have a coolant leak on this side, it could be your upper intake manifold, because it has coolant passages going to your throttle body. So I guess it could also be from your throttle body gasket. It could also be that little cap that was on the lower intake manifold. If you're leaking from there, you don't need to remove the lower intake manifold. You need to just remove that exhaust pipe, which is bolted in there, and then there's 2 bolts on the back. You can remove that and then replace that. That's if you have coolant leak. If you have an oil leak, again, it's probably the end seals on the lower intake manifold. Okay. Oh, and the only place that on the upper intake manifold that has coolant running through it is right there on the bottom of that. It's got two very small passages about this big that go through the lower intake manifold up into the upper intake manifold, inside the bottom of the thermostat housing, the throttle body housing, and then up and around and back into the lower intake manifold. Okay, that's the only area where your upper intake manifold has coolant running through it. Okay, with that said, let's go ahead and start the car. Okay, so it's been about 10-15 minutes that this thing has been running. We got no issues to report, no leaks from there, no leaks from there either, no check engine lights. Everything seems to be working as it should, and we are going to finally wrap this video up. So yeah, don't let this job scare you. If you don't run into any problems like I did, it's not a big deal, as long as you've got some experience dealing with this. I guess this is like as far as the difficulty goes, this is like a medium repair job, I guess. So if you got some experience, don't be that afraid to tackle this. Okay, pretty straightforward job. Just remember what you take off to put back on whatever you take off. Make a list if you don't need to, or just watch a video. Okay, so yeah, I hope this video helps people out there. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you have any comment suggestions, please leave them below, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.